Hey everybody, welcome to Pop Culture Philosophers. I'm Rockin Robbie Billups, and it's time for the weekly comic book review. Hey everybody, thanks for checking out the video. I'm Rockin Robbie Billups, and it's time for the weekly comic book review. It's the show where I read a lot of comic books, and I let you know what I thought about them, and we always start with the pick of the week. This week's pick of the week: The Plot, number 3 from Vault Comics, written by Tim Daniel and Michael Morisi, with artwork by Joshua Hickson, Jordan Boyd on the coloring, Jim Campbell on the lettering. Such a pitch-perfect comic book with issue number 3. The Plot is an exceptionally well-done horror comic book from Vault Comics. It's kind of got the feel and tone of something like The Haunting of Hill House, the recent Netflix series, I would say, but it definitely has its own stamp on the genre as well. This book is effective, it's atmospheric, it's moody, it's got great artwork with lots of shadows being used, lots of atmosphere and tone being provided by the artwork. The lettering is fantastic. The writing is great. It really centers around the drama of this family, the tragedy of this family. The plot keeps getting better. Issue number 3 is the best one yet. If you haven't checked it out, definitely want to check out one of the best comic books of 2019 and one of the best horror comic books in recent years. The Plot, number 3, out this week from Michael Morisi, Tim Daniel, Jordan Boyd, Joshua Hickson, and Jim Campbell, and all the cool cats over at Vault Comics. So be on the lookout for it. Vault has an exceptional week this week, so let's keep running right on through. Michael Morisi has another book out this week, Maul, number 4, that's co-written by Gary Dauberman, artwork by Zach Hartong, Addison Duke on the coloring, Jim Campbell on the lettering. Michael Morisi is such an amazing writer. I'm a huge fan of his talent and his work. Partnering up with Gary Dauberman on this one, The Maul is such a fun romp through a satirical look at society. Really cool stuff, right? It's a post-apocalyptic tale set in a mall. It's about a society, after society has ended, that has reaffirmed its foothold into the world in a mall, right? So it's kind of like Dawn of the Dead meets The Warriors, but without the zombies. That's how I've described it. This issue number 4, lots of revelations, lots of stuff becomes clear, lots of questions answered. This book's got a very frantic pace to it. The artwork really accentuates that frantic tone. It may not be up to everybody's liking, but I absolutely love what Hartong and company, including Duke, the colorist, does with this book. Really keeps that frantic pace going. It's wild, it's outrageous, and it's saying a lot about society. Really like it. Maul number 4 out from Vault this week. And Resonant number 5, this is the final issue of Resonant for now, or at least I really hope for now, because this book is a very exciting ending to the first arc, as long as it's the first arc. I'm pretty sure that this book will be coming back at some point in the future, but Resonant has been absolutely fantastic. David Andre, Alejandro Aragon, Jason Wordie, and Darren Bennett, an absolutely amazing creative team working in conjunction. It's about a world, it's post-apocalyptic, and there are these waves that hit, right? And when these waves hit, it brings out your innermost thoughts, right? So if you just have this random thought of, oh, my head hurts so bad, I just wish I could just drive a nail through it, or something like that. If you've ever had that thought. Anybody ever seen the movie Pi? Anyway, so Resonant would, like the waves in Resonant, would take that and amplify it when it was hitting, and you would definitely do that harm to yourself. This book's been great, really focused in on human drama, a great look at a post-apocalyptic world. I loved it. Issue number 5 is great. One of my favorite things about Resonant this entire year has been how the writing, the artwork, and the coloring, the lettering, everything works in conjunction to make a very loud product. You get what I'm saying? The experience of reading this book is very loud. Now, when you read comic books, you really use a lot of your senses, but not so much your sense of sound, right? But the team behind Resonant really does everything they do to make this the most noisy comic books, one of the most noisy comic books, and the most noisy comic book on the shelves right now. Resonant number 5, a fantastic ending to the first arc. Really excited for more. Also from Vault this week, Relics of Youth, number 3. It's a group of teens that have been mysteriously led together to find this island. And on this island, in the Bermuda Triangle, there is the Fountain of Youth. And of course, there are other people that are trying to protect it, other people that are trying to find it as well. So this has been a really fun book. I've really been enjoying it. It does have a little bit of a slight younger readers lean to it, but it's not kid-friendly whatsoever. This is definitely a book for adults, but it's really fun. This would be like if CW made shows that were actually good. Relics of Youth would probably be one of them. I love the artwork. It's very clean. Very clear. The story's great. The character's well defined. Lots of mystery, but lots of questions answered in issue number 3. Relics of Youth, out from Vault this week. Vault has an amazing week. But let's jump over to Marvel because we got a few Dawn of X books to get to. First of all, New Mutants number 2. I thought issue number 1 was pretty decent. Jonathan Hickman working with Ed Brisson on this one. Artwork done by Rod Reese. I like the artwork. It's a little scratchy. It's a little rough and raw. It's a little bit more old school New Mutants fans will like it, like fans of people like Sienkiewicz, but Rod Reese does his own thing as well. But New Mutants really has a very light-hearted vibe. All the Dawn of X books have been pretty heavy, especially the ones out this week, except for New Mutants. This book has a very light, fun tone to it. It's got a lot of humor. It's got a lot of adventure. It's got a lot of nice, interesting character dynamics and character interactions going on. I really think that Brisson and Hickman know these characters. They know them very well. Hickman's revisiting the whole Sam and Bobby friendship that he helped develop even further in his Avengers run. So New Mutants number 2, I really liked it. I really like this. With all the deep, dark stuff going on in all the X-Men books right now. You know, Xavier's dead and humans are invading and all this utopia already seems to be crumbling. It's nice to have a lighthearted take on the Dawn of X books like New Mutants. I really like this, and it has some really interesting developments, especially towards the end. And as far as X-Men continuity goes, especially involving the Shi'ar, big stuff happens. And New Mutants number 2. X-Force number 2 is here. So after X-Force number 1 just kind of blew us all away, got really dark, got really dour, high stakes all of a sudden, they really pick up that steam and that momentum, and they keep it going in issue number 2. And it's actually, to me, even probably a better issue because it's got Kid Omega in it. That's right. I absolutely loved X-Force number 2. Benjamin Percy with artwork by Joshua Cassara, Dean White on the coloring, Joe Caramanga on the lettering. A fantastic team. I really like the texture detail in the artwork, especially with the aid of the colors. This book is a dark take on the CIA division of the X-Men world, you could say, or definitely how that division's going to get started. Cool work with Black Tom, mostly in issue number 1, but issue 2's got a nice spotlight on Wolverine, and it does answer the question, so Xavier's dead, what's the plan? What happens next? That all gets answered in X-Force. Number 2 is me and the cats have been chatting for the last couple weeks on Jim Mint's channel, Jim Mint Collectibles. On Friday nights that we've been doing the spoiler review of the weekly comic books. It definitely seems like you pretty much almost have to read every single Dawn of X book to get the entire story, but X-Force to me is very essential. Fallen Angels number 2 is also out this week. Seems like it's a really quick turnover from issue number 1 to issue number 2. I really like this one as well. Exploring the character of Conan, the actual Psylocke, one would say. X-23, Kid Cable kind of thrown in there. Brian Hill doing a great job. The artwork gets a little rushed feeling in this one. I really thought Kudronsky's artwork was actually different and a little bit more bold in issue number 1, but in issue number 2 it gets back into a little bit more of what I'm familiar with, but it just feels a little bit rushed. That being said, I do like the story. Some interesting things. I don't think that the stuff that's happening in here is going to have the biggest overall impact on the X-Men universe, but I do think it's really cool that while this crazy Dawn of X stuff is going on, all this Krakoan type stuff, you got these 3 characters that are a little bit outcast, a little misunderstood, and you pull the focus in on them, especially with someone who can handle dialogue and pacing as well as Brian Hill can. Fallen Angels number 2, out this week. Absolute Carnage has an epilogue with Venom, issue number 20. Donny Cates promised that this is going to be a big issue with some big revelations, and it does have some fun revelations towards the end of it. I really liked it, really like the focus in on this. It does really touch on the Dylan and Eddie, I almost said romance, on their relationship, their father and son, right? Now Dylan knows that Eddie's his father, so now we're picking up the pieces and moving on from there. But there's other stuff that's developed and integrated and introduced in this issue that's kind of a big deal. I will just say this, that fans of Jonathan Hickman will like a lot of what's going on in Venom number 20. I really liked it, thought it was a solid issue. Decent artwork, not as good as it typically is in the series, but we're getting ready for Venom Island and the return of Mark Bagley. Stegman is going to be coming shortly after that, I'm assuming. Venom number 20 out this week. Do not miss it. Speaking of Absolute Carnage, Absolute Carnage, Scream, Curse of Carnage. It's a series focusing in on Scream post Absolute Carnage. So we got a new Scream. It's Andy, is that her name? Yeah, Andy Benton. She was a Maniac, I do believe. So now she's the new Scream. And this issue is basically about her picking up the pieces trying to deal with this new role that she has, this new symbiotic partner that she has. So a lot of the typical kind of symbiote type stuff you have in here, but I really want to point out how great Chris Mooningham's artwork is. This is the artist of Five Ghost, one of my favorite Image comics from a few years ago. I'm still wanting that book to return so bad, but I do like the artwork. Very pulpy, very old school feeling. The story's pretty decent as well. Chapman does a great job with the story, kind of ramping up the horror when he needs to and kind of making, kind of keeping the superhero melodramatic groundedness to it as well. That's a weird thing to say. Superhero melodramatic groundedness, but whatever, that's how it works. It's the Marvel way, right? Anyway, Scream Curse of Carnage #1, a pretty decent debut, but it doesn't seem like it's going to have too much staying power. But the art to me is the big spotlight in this issue. 2099 continues on with these tie-ins. First of all, Punisher 2099. So now, and Conan, by the way. So as we have deduced last week, the main story is Amazing Spider-Man. So you could just read Spider-Man and maybe the Alpha and the Omega and not pay attention to any of these tie-ins, and you won't probably miss anything. You just might be like, who's that person? Because they'll probably show up in Omega. Anyway, this is a new take on Punisher 2099. To me, I found this to be rather boring. I didn't really kind of get interested into it at all. Kind of felt like it was just phoned in. It's some interesting stories, and I like how Frank Gallows or Jake. I like how Gallows is used in here, but it's actually kind of didn't change it. And maybe I'm just holding too much onto my childhood nostalgic memories of how much I love 2099, in particular Doom 2099. But I don't know, this was just boring, didn't really do much for me. These 2099 one-shots for me so far have been a letdown. That being said, Conan the Barbarian 2099 is probably the best one-shot in this 2099 thing so far. I'm not the hugest Conan fan, so apparently Conan, I guess, stays in the Marvel Universe and he lives a long time. And he winds up in 2099. So, I mean, it's interesting and it's cool. And it was the most well done out of all these one-shots so far, but it still wasn't anything to me that felt necessary, worth the price tag, or really involving or being, or needing or deserving too much of my attention. I don't know. This 2099 stuff's just not doing much for me. The Conan one was the better one so far. The Punisher one bored me. The Fantastic Four one bored me. Conan at least kept me entertained throughout. I'll say that. But by the end of it, I was like, why did I read that? Oh, I guess to let y'all know what I thought about it. Fantastic Four Negative Zone. It's a one-shot. It's got a backup story in there with the Fantastics. It was kind of dumb. I didn't really dig into that one. But the main story is a really quick, one-and-done Fantastic Four story where Reed has, a long time ago, sent some specimens out into the Negative Zone. He never heard back from them, and now all of a sudden, the alarm goes off. Oh my goodness, they're there. What have they become? What have they grown into? And it's now his duty, his ethical duty as a scientist to go and clean up his mess. Actually, it was his duty to do that back in the day when it first happened. Actually, it was his duty not to contaminate the Negative Zone in the first place. Shame, Reed Richards. Shame. Anyway, it's a one-and-done story. If you just want another fun Fantastic Four story that is cemented into the Negative Zone and does have an appearance by Blastar, check out Fantastic Four Negative Zone. But it's nothing essential or needed, but for a big FF fan like me, I mean, I ain't going to shy away from any Fantastic Four books, including Fantastic Four Grand Design #2. I really like the Grand Design thing, X-Men Grand Design by Ed Piscor. He took all this X-Men continuity and made it all one big story in a very fun, indie-type way. That's what Tom Scioli's going to do with this one. I love his artwork. He's like a teenage Jack Kirby drawn in the back of his notebook. I've described it like that many times. I loved issue #1. Issue #2 for me, as much as I did enjoy it, they skip a whole lot in here. They skip a whole lot. So with the X-Men, they did 3 books, and each book was 2 issues, big extra size issues. So there's a lot of stuff in here. It's very dense, and it's got a lot of panels per page. However, they skipped a lot of Fantastic Four lore and story, and I just, that kind of bothers me. I was really expecting and hoping to have a 3-part series like Piscor did for the X-Men. Of course, I should have known better. The X-Men are way more popular than the Fantastic Four are right now. So maybe this 2-issue series is all we're going to get. That saddens me. It saddens me. I really feel like this is a missed opportunity. Anyway, Fantastic Four Grand Design #2 out this week. Speaking of Fantastic Four, there's way too much of it now, isn't there? Invisible Woman #5. This wraps up the Invisible Woman miniseries, written by Mark Waid. This is the very first ever solo Invisible Woman series, so it was fun. It was neat. Shedding a little light on her past as a spy. It was a dynamic action spy thriller with great artwork by Matteo De Alois. I know I said that wrong, probably. However, I love the artwork. I thought the story's pretty decent. Nothing to write home to mom about or anything like that. But Invisible Woman #5 is a nice, clear, and concise wrap-up to what's been a very fun first solo effort for Susan Richards. The Avengers #27 is here, and yeah, I know we just had one. Kicking off the Star Brand Reborn story. I'm really excited for this. Unlike comics with Bueller, I'm actually a fan of Star Brand, so I'm kind of excited to see what's Jason Aaron and company are going to be trying to do here. The last Star Brand we saw died in Marvel Legacy after he went a little crazy, so I've been interested in this story, and now we're finally getting to it, except for this issue was like, what did this have to do with Star Brand? It didn't feel like it had anything to do with it. Now, I know it's just kind of the opening shot. There's some great dialogue in there by Blade and some great stuff going on with the individual characters. Ed McGuinness back on the artwork, and he does some Gladiator bits in here that are just majestic, and they made me really want to go back and reread his run on Superman with Jeff Loeb. That was some really fun and cool stuff back in the late 90s, early 2000s. Are Worlds at War, anybody? But Avengers #27 is okay, but it didn't really... I'm interested in this mystery, but this issue to me just kind of felt like wasting time to get there. But I don't know. It's cool to see Ed McGuinness back. Ironheart #12 is here. This is the last issue of this series. Eve L. Ewing has done such an amazing job with this book. All 12 issues have been fun. Lots of throwbacks to some New Warriors characters, namely Midnight's Fire and Silhouette. So if you're an old school New Warriors fan, you definitely want to check into that. I think that Ewing and company have done better work with Riri Williams in that character than Brian Michael Bendis did or anybody else that's worked with this character. I really want to see this team return and continue the story eventually in some way, shape, or form. But Ironheart to me was a very fantastic, inclusive comic book that was very much rooted in the Marvel tradition set by people like Kirby Lee and Ditko. Anyway, Ironheart #12. Sad to see it go, but I hear things that they're coming back. At some point, we'll see. I would like to see it come back, though. That's been a very fun, interesting ride. And, you know, having Midnight's Fire and Silhouette in there, I mean, come on. New Warriors is my shit. You know what I'm saying? Uncanny X-Men 266 Facsimile Edition. So if you've never been able to get the first appearance of Gambit, or some would argue the second appearance of Gambit, you have a chance now for $3.99. Get a facsimile version. There you go. Just don't sell it on eBay and try to tell people it's the original. That's shady, right? John Constantine, Hellblazer #1. So we had the one shot last week. Basically, Hellblazer returning to Vertigo. But Vertigo's no more, so now it's just DC Black Label. But this is that Vertigo-rooted version of John Constantine Hellblazer. This is really cool. The one shot that came last week, or last month, I thought was just a little wonky. I kind of got what they were trying to do, but this issue I really liked. It really felt like an old school Hellblazer title from the Vertigo days. I like the idea. Constantine's been missing. He's coming back. The world has changed. London has changed. Britain has changed. The universe may have changed. John hasn't changed. I really liked it. I thought it was a great first issue. If you're an old school Constantine fan, I think you're really going to like this stuff right here. I think this is a better take on the character than what's been used in the DC universe in recent years. But anyway, John Constantine, Hellblazer #1 out this week. Not my favorite, but it was pretty solid, and I'm excited to see what's going to come out of this story. It felt like old school Hellblazer to me. Tales from the Dark Multiverse, Infinite Crisis #1. This is a very verbose, dense, supremely packed story that's definitely worth your time. Not as strong as Death of Superman, but right up there with Nightfall, and to me better than the Blackest Night one. It has a different take on the events of Infinite Crisis. Do you remember when Maxwell Lord killed the Blue Beetle? Well, what if that didn't happen? What if Blue Beetle killed Ted Kord? That's basically what this one is, a dark version of an alternate future in the Dark Multiverse for DC. These have basically been like what ifs, but they've been fun, they've been cool. This one's written by James Tynion with artwork by Aaron Lopresti. Lopresti has just been announced to be at the Huntsville Comic and Pop Culture Expo in 2020. That's awesome, so you definitely make your plans to be there now. But Tales from the Dark Multiverse, Infinite Crisis was one I really enjoyed, but of course I love Infinite Crisis. I love all DC Crisis events, so I love seeing dark alternate takes on those things. Really liked this issue, thought it was solid. It's dense, it's verbose. It will take you a while to read it though. I will guarantee you that. Detective Comics 1016 is here. It wraps up this Mrs. Free story, and it wraps it up in a decent fashion, albeit a little bit melodramatic. Some dialogue in here that made me a little like, ugh, you know, but overall I did like this take on it. I feel like Peter Tomasi's doing a great job telling great, solid Batman stories. I think sometimes he just lets them go a little too long. This story's kind of felt like that to me, and it kind of had a little bit of cliched moments towards the end, but I did like how it kind of inverts some things at the end of it. But Detective Comics 1016 is here. A lot of people are picking that as the best Batman book out on shelves right now. Flash number 83 has been an incredibly consistent book since Joshua Williamson started this book in 2016. 83 plus issues, and he's still going strong. This has been a fun story. As a result of the hostile takeover of the Year of the Villain and all the gifts that Luthor has given out to all the different villains in the DC Universe, Captain Cold and the Rogues have taken over Central City and put an end to the Flash. We don't know a whole lot about what's exactly going on, but it's being revealed slowly as the story goes, but I'm loving it. I really love the artwork. I think Flash has been such a great book since Williamson has taken over, and Flash number 83 is no exception. Shazam number 8. Jeff Johns is doing a great job of to me embellishing and making the mythology of Shazam and Captain Marvel just a little bit more engrossing, a little bit more captivating and engaging and enthralling. Shazam number 8 is yet another fine chapter. You got Scott Collins on the artwork, but you find out a little bit more some of the other lands that are being introduced, and maybe there's a significant first appearance in this issue. I don't know. I'm just going to say that maybe there is. Shazam number 8, I really like the issue. I think Jeff Johns has been doing a great job with this story. Scott Collins' artwork is solid for this issue, but it does kind of take you out of the natural flow of all the artists that have come before, like Dale Inglesham and company. But it's still a great, solid chapter, and what's to me been one of my favorite runs of Shazam. Period. There you go. Justice League Dark number 17 is here. This reveals a little bit of the untold backstory on Cersei, and it really sets up a very dire circumstance for the Justice League Dark. James Tynion's coming to the end of his run very soon, but he's all bringing it to a head. This has been a great book focused in on the darker side, the underbelly of the DC heroes, the magic side of things. Great ending. I'm really excited to see where this is going to all wrap up and tie up, but I think James Tynion and company have been doing a great job. Great double-page spreads, great artwork. Justice League Dark has been a really high point over at DC right now. Issue 17 out this week. Action Comics 1017 is here, and it's got an acetate cover too, so did those last ones. John Romita Jr. doing the artwork. It feels like old school John Romita Jr., and I kind of like that. The story to me, though, was all over the place. It felt just disconnected from just... Bendis and Superman right now is just bothering me so much. I recently reread Man of Steel, and I still thought that was solid. I reread his first arc of the Unity Saga from Superman 1 through 6 with Ivan Reis on the artwork, and that was okay. But right now, I don't know, this is kind of a little bit of a tie-in to Year of the Villain, but it's also trying to tie in to the ongoing story with the Invisible Mafia, and a little bit about Leviathan. Too much, too soon, all at once. I don't know. This book didn't do anything for me. I thought it was kind of bad, actually. But there you go. Action Comics 1017 out this week. And look, it's Batman Creature of the Night number 4, the final issue of Kurt Busiek and John Paul Leon's miniseries that focuses in on an alternate take, a different perspective on Batman. What if a kid grew up obsessed with Batman, and then one day some trauma happened, and he was actually able to manifest physically this demonic version of Batman to do his bidding? A great wrap-up. It's been like 2 years since this book came out. It was a long delay between 3 and 4, but I'm glad it's here. I didn't really necessarily remember everything that came before, but within a few pages, I totally did. I love the artwork, love the mood, love the story, love the take on Batman. It's from a different perspective, a little bit more psychological, and I really thought it was a very effective and satisfying ending. Batman Creature of the Night number 4 is out this week. Freedom Fighters, number 11 is here. This is the penultimate issue of Robert Vendetti's series with Eddie Barrows on the artwork. I love the artwork. It's big. It's explosive. This is about that world where the Nazis won World War II and they took over America. And now you have Uncle Sam and the Freedom Fighters, a new version, a new iteration, coming back, trying to restore hope to the people and overthrow this terrible regime. It's been fun. It's been great. It's got some great impactful moments, and the artwork has been explosive. Freedom Fighters number 11 does not disappoint. Also from DC this week, we have the Batman Giant 100-page special number 2 and Swamp Thing 100-page Giant number 2. Also from DC Black Label, we have Basketful of Heads number 2, an issue that I really liked even more than issue number 1, but you definitely need issue number 1 in order to make this make sense. However, this totally has me hooked and engaged into the story now. Don't want to spoil too much about it, but I really did like this issue. This woman, she's basically trapped. These people are like robbing and torturing the people around her, and the only hope she has is this old like artifact that's an axe, and there's more to it than meets the eye. I'll definitely say that. But Basketful of Heads, Joe Hill, son of Stephen King, curating his own line of comic books over at DC Black Label. Basket Full of Heads, issue number 2, in conjunction with issue number 1. Great start. I'm really hooked. I'm engaged. Can't wait to see how this all turns out. The Last God, issue number 2 is here. So I would say about this the same thing I said about issue number 1. A fantastic, very imaginative, and well thought out and densely layered world that's been built up by Philip Kennedy Johnson. Amazing artwork by Riccardo Federici. Amazing artwork. Story, confusing, couldn't quite get into it. I'm not the biggest fan of fantasy work like this, so this is probably, from this point forward, something I'm going to have to trade weight. This seems like a big fantasy sprawling epic. If you like that kind of stuff, I highly encourage you to check it out. That's just not usually my cup of tea. The artwork's great in here, but the story is just not engaging to me, and it just feels like so much information overload. I'm definitely going to check it out, though, when it comes out in hardcover, trade, whatever it is. Let's jump over to Image Comics. Philadelphia number 1 is here. Brings us an interesting urban horror take on vampires. It's cool. Jason Sean Alexander's artwork's probably my highlight. Rodney Barnes' story is pretty decent. The execution gets a little stilted and stagnant at times for me, but Philadelphia was okay. It was decent. I don't know if it's enough to really bring me in. I love vampire fiction, but you got to do something really cool with vampire fiction to get me. I've seen it. It's all been done and there, right? That being said, I do like the relationship that's being built in this story about a son and his father, but I also like the way that story is structured. I don't want to spoil too much about it, but the artwork is pretty solid. It does have some effective, horrific, vampiric artwork, but the story itself just felt a little clunky in its execution. That was my opinion. Ascender number 7 is here, and it's Telsa's secret origin. What's happened between Descender and Ascender. I love it. Ascender is kind of a follow-up to Descender. You don't have to have ever read Descender to have read Ascender, but I think it would help. Descender and Ascender are 2 of my favorite comic books of recent memory. Jeff Lemire, Dustin Nguyen and company doing a fantastic job. This issue is no exception. It's moved away from science fiction and gotten into horror fantasy. A usage of vampires that I liked a whole lot more in this than I did Philadelphia. Of course, they're space vampires, and that makes them infinitely cooler, right? Anyway, Ascender number 7 is here. If you have not been jumping on this book, this and the Descender that came before it, what's wrong with you? You really need to. Those are fantastic books. Criminal number 10 is here. Ed Brubaker, Sean Phillips and company doing what they do best. Crime noir. Film noir, crime fiction. They do it, and they do it very well. This issue was probably, to me, the worst so far since the relaunch. It just kind of, with its structure, was a little too jumpy from one point to one point to one point, but that's just me. That being said, the artwork's still dynamic and striking, and it's very film noir, like I said. If you like that type of stuff, you're going to love this. Sean Phillips' line work is absolutely amazing, and Ed Brubaker knows how to write a hard-boiled detective crime story. Even if that detective's a piece of crap, you know. Criminal number 10 is out this week. I read a few from Source Point Press, and there were a couple that I really liked. First of all, Misplaced number 1. I did like this book. It's pretty interesting. It's about a dude who awakens. He's in heaven. He's dead. He's in heaven. He should have heaven. Everything is there. Anything he wants can be there, except for the love of his life, his soulmate. His soulmate's missing. No one knows where her soul is or anything like that. So he decides that he's going to be bold and leave heaven and try to find the mystery of what happened to her soul. Really dark, foreboding artwork, even when it's dealing with something like heaven. The artwork is very effective to me. I really did like it. It's pretty much completely done by Chris Callahan. I thought it was imaginative. I thought it was a great, interesting take on the concept of afterlife and heaven and love. I thought this was actually a very well done comic. The Misplaced Chapter 1 out on comic shops this week from Source Point Press. It's small press, not going to be a lot out there, so I highly encourage you to check it out if you're interested as soon as you can. Also from Source Point Press was Touching Evil number 1. This one didn't really do much for me. The artwork and the story was very static, very stagnant, didn't really do much for me. It's an interesting enough idea. It's about this dude who can, like, touch people, and as long as they're truly evil, he can basically kill them and trap their souls in his head or something like that. And then there's this new lady that's introduced, and somehow the power gets passed on to her or whatever. I don't know. This book didn't do anything for me. It was very static. It was very rigid. It was just not very fluid. It didn't do a great job of engaging me, and it was actually kind of a chore to get through. So I hate giving things a bad review, but Touching Evil number 1 did not do much for me. Ogres number 1 I read, and I felt so lost and so confused, and I get to the end of this, and I find out that this is apparently a sequel to a book called Ogre. So that makes sense why it was a little confusing for me, but I was completely lost when I read this book, but I did love the artwork. I thought the artwork was solid. Super cool stuff. The artwork is great. The art is done by Sean Daly, and I believe this is the same cat that did the art on Samurai Grandpa, which was a fantastic book from Source Point Press this year. However, I don't know if it's just the story not being clear, or me missing the first part, but that didn't do much for me. Goth, Young Lovers at War, #1. This one I thought had some interesting, rough, raw artwork in it, but it didn't do anything for me. This one kind of was boring. It's a one-shot, so at least there was just that. But I don't know, it was just a little too cliche, a little too obvious. It just didn't do much for me. That's another one I read from Source Point Press. But the other one that I really did enjoy was Gutter Magic. Gutter Magic #3 from Rich Douek with artwork by Brett Barkley, colors by Jules Rivera, lettered by Nick Shaw. I think this was a fantastic issue. I'm really excited for the cliffhanger ending and what's coming. This book was originally released already, a 4-issue miniseries. Now it's been elevated to an ongoing, so they're re-releasing the first 4 issues again. I've never gotten a chance to read them. Rich Douek wrote Wailing Blade and Road of Bones, 2 fantastic books that came out this year. Definitely recommend that you check those ones out. But Gutter Magic's really fun. It's kind of steampunky, a little bit of magic, but a little bit of tie-in to some... I don't want to spoil it. Gutter Magic's pretty cool, though. Issue #3 is out this week. From Scout Comics, we had Last Stop #1. Last Stop #1, I really like the art. I really like the coloring. It's kind of monochromatic in a way, but it switches the colors that they're using. So I like the artwork. I thought it was bold, but the story didn't really do much for me. It felt a little cliched, a little obvious, just a little boring, didn't really engage me. And I think that this is one of those things that I think it's Scout that does this, where they do a first issue, and then they'll do a trade later on. So there's not going to be any more issues. There's a first issue, and then the trade, which is going to have everything together. It's a weird program. It's kind of like a pilot, I guess, in a way. I don't know. Last Stop #1, though. It's a nice cardstock cover, and I really like the artwork, and I like the presentation, but the story itself just didn't grab me. I read a lot of comic books this week, though. Star Trek Picard Countdown. So IDW does these Star Trek tie-ins every once in a while, especially when a new movie or something's coming out, and they're usually not necessary. But when you read them later on, if you're a big Trekker, if you're a big Trekkie, if you're a big Star Trek fan like I am, later on, you can read them and enjoy them. But when they first come out, they always kind of bore me. You know, you're reading a big stack of comics, and some of them are very exciting. You get X-Force, you get New Mutants, you got Infinite Crisis, Dark Multiverse type stuff, but then you got Star Trek Picard. And it's okay. But you know that it's not really, like, essential to read this. This is just something that later on you read as a Star Trek fan and you enjoy. Anyway, that's a really bad cover. Terrible Photoshop there, by the way. Whatever. Second Coming #5 is here, the penultimate issue of the first story arc of Second Coming, because it seems like they're alluding that this may go a little bit further, and I hope it does. This is kind of like a deconstruction of Christianity in a way, but in a very positive light. I definitely would say that. Second Coming has been really fun. Mark Russell, Richard Pace and company have been telling a very nuanced, heartfelt story. This actually gets to the root of what the message of Christ was. And how it can apply into today's world. I really like this. It's humorous. It's fun. It's slightly irreverent. I'm not gonna deny that. But I really like this book, and I think anything worthwhile is worth making fun of just a little bit, so you can get it to freshen up and work again, right? And that's what I think they're doing with Second Coming. Issue #5, fantastic. I love this book so much. Tommy Gun Wizards. Machine Gun Wizards is here with issue #4, the final issue, and they have to change the name of the book. I guess they're worried about a lawsuit or some copyright or something. So Tommy Gun Wizards is now Machine Gun Wizards, but don't be fooled, because when you see it on the shelves, it's just going to say Wizards because they boarded that up. Anyway, this is the final issue of a great run. It's basically the Untouchables, but with magic and not liquor. So magic has been banned and prohibited, not liquor. So it's Elliot Ness and the Untouchables versus Al Capone all over the illegal use of magic. It's been fun. Sammy Cavella's artwork is great. Christian Ward's telling this crazy fun story. All these little backups, by the way, from the previous 3 issues totally are important to the entire story. I loved it. Thought it was a really solid ending. Woven Heart #2 is here from Mad Cave Studios. It's kind of like Van Helsing meets Doctor Who. I thought the first issue was interesting enough, but the second one kind of lost me a little bit. Didn't really engage me. It wasn't that it was bad, but I don't know. It just didn't really quite grab me or do anything effective or unique enough to really grab my attention. It's an interesting book. It's a great concept, but I just feel like it could be a little bit more impactful in its execution. Maybe it was for the artwork for me. The artwork to me was just okay. It was decent. It wasn't bad. It's definitely a better artist than I am, but just didn't really stand out among the mold. And I think sometimes it sucks to say this sometimes, but in small press, you really got to stick out to get people's attention. Woven Heart #2, I just don't know if it's going to do that because it didn't quite do it for me. Mighty Morphin Power Rangers #45 is here, and holy cow, does this book get better? Yes, it gets better. So we got the Omega Rangers, we got the untold tale of what actually happened to Jason and Trini and Zach, and you have some really interesting turns in this issue that I was not expecting. And when I don't expect something to happen in a comic book and it happens and it blows me away, I think that's very effective. Basically, this has been Power Rangers done right. You don't have all the cheesiness of the old show, but it's very nuanced, it's very real, it's very character-driven, and filling in those gaps in the Power Rangers lore. Old school fans are going to love this, and I have heard from some people that have never read or never watched Power Rangers before really digging on this. Plus, you got them chromium foil covers. You can't beat that, right? And I want to point out this awesome hardcover that comes out this week. So this is the Matrix 20th Anniversary comic book hardcover. This collects 28 original stories set in the world of the Matrix. So when the Matrix first came out, a bunch of artists, including Jeff Darrow and company, like a bunch of really great artists, Tim Sale, Tommy Lee Edwards, Neil Gaiman, Bill Sienkiewicz, Dave Gibbons, John Van Fleet, Peter Bagg, Troy Nixie, Paul Chadwick. You get what I'm saying? You get where I'm going? But back in the day when The Matrix came out, all these little short comics and stuff were out there. They were on the internet. But back in the day, you know, reading comics on the internet, how weird would that be, right? So a lot of this stuff, a lot of people have never actually checked out. It's been out of print for a very long time. I'm so excited they've done a 20th anniversary hardcover. It's big. It's massive. I cannot wait to open this up and check out what's inside. I love The Matrix. Everybody that checks this channel out knows I love The Matrix. So I'm really stoked for this. Maybe I'll do a video of that if I have time over the Thanksgiving holiday. Which reminds me to say, thank you. Hey, happy Thanksgiving. What are we thankful for here at Pop Culture Philosophers? We're thankful for you, the viewer, the subscriber, the liker, the sharer, all that jazz and more. We really do appreciate it. Let me know in the comments below what you thought about this week's comics. What are you reading? What are you excited for? Thank you so much for your support. We really do appreciate it. I've been Rockin Robbie Billups. Check us out at popculturephilosophers.com for podcasts and a whole lot more. Thanks for rocking with us. Keep on reading.